The Chicago Cubs are a historic name in Major League Baseball. Some people say it's because of their 96-year-old ballpark, one of the oldest ballparks currently being played in Major League Baseball. Some say that the Cubs have a historic name because of their crazed and committed fan base nationwide. And others, and perhaps the most popular reason why the Cubs are a historic name, is because of their 101 years since winning a World Series title. This is the year. This is the year. Now that is a statement made every spring training by diehard Cubs fans across the nation. This is the year that the Chicago Cubs are going to defy all odds and win a World Series championship. This is the year that all critics must shut their mouths and see it finally happen. This is the year where we can actually find Chicago Cubs merchandise in every sporting goods store around instead of having to order it online, because the Chicago Cubs are going to win the World Series. Now, I have been making that statement and have been believing and pleading for the Chicago Cubs to win a World Series for 22 years. And at the end of every season, when it ends in a loss in some form or fashion, I have renewed hope that the next year is the year for us. So 2010 is the year that the Cubs are going to win the World Series. Now, some people look at me and think that I'm crazy because they believe that it's not even possible. Because the Chicago Cubs, according to legend, have been cursed. Now, how did this curse take place? Well, the Chicago Cubs were in the World Series in 1945 against the Detroit Tigers, and it was Game 4, and it was being played at Wrigley Field. So everyone's gathered together, and they're ready, and here comes the ball game, and a man named William Sienna shows up with his billy goat. He's got 2 tickets to the ball game, one for him, and oddly and strangely enough, one for his billy goat. Well, Sienna's was denied access to the ballpark that day because, well, his billy goat had a foul odor. And they didn't allow foul odors apparently into the ballpark at that time. So he was dismissed, and we don't know exactly what type of conversation went on between Sienna's and those who denied his access, but we know that legend says that one thing he said has cursed the Chicago Cubs ever since. He is said to have made this statement: "The Cubs shall win no more." The Chicago Cubs have not won or been in a World Series since 1945 and have not won a World Series since their previous victory in 1908. That's not to say that the Chicago Cubs haven't had good seasons. And we all know that common sense tells us that this is just a legend, but you can't help but look at Chicago Cubs history and kind of wonder. In 1984, attempts were made to break this curse on the Cubs, and the Chicago Cubs organization actually brought in a billy goat into the stadium at the beginning of the 1984 season. Now, the Chicago Cubs did not make it to the World Series or win the World Series, but they did win their division that year. In 1994, desperate measures again called for a billy goat to be brought into the stadium. The Cubs had lost their first 12 home games. Now, right after the billy goat was brought into the stadium in 1994, the Cubs did win their next home game. However, that season was unfortunately suspended due to a players' strike. But the Cubs have had some pretty good years. In recent years, they have won the wild card in their division. They have made it to the playoffs. Unfortunately, have not had a very good showing. They've been swept by several teams, including the Atlanta Braves and the Los Angeles Dodgers. Painful to see for any Cubs fans. But in 2003, the Chicago Cubs had their closest encounter to breaking this curse. They were in the NLCS against the Florida Marlins, and they were winning the series 3-2. Game 6 was being played at Wrigley Field, and the Cubs were 5 outs away from breaking the curse and having their first World Series berth since 1945. And then it happened. a long fly ball was hit down the left field line. And Cubs left fielder at the time, Moises Alou, takes off running for the ball, and it looks like he has a chance at catching it, when all of a sudden the ball is knocked into the stands. But not by the glove of Moises Alou, but by the hands of a man named Steve Bartman. The Cubs tried to get the umpires to say fan interference, but to no avail. And the Cubs went on to crumble and lose that game, and also to lose Game 7 of the World Series. Now, what took place in 2003 made me even question if the Cubs were cursed. We could taste it. We were so close. And then this crazed Cubs fan does what any of us probably would have done in that situation. When you see what appears to be a foul ball coming your way, you stick out your hand. You just want to catch it. And he interfered with a possible catch ball from a left fielder, and now has become the most hated man in Chicago Cubs baseball, and has literally since had to go into hiding for fear of his life. So are the Chicago Cubs cursed? Is it really possible that a denied billy goat and words from a man in 1945 have really set up the future for this beloved baseball team? Or is it possible for the Cubs to overcome and to break this alleged curse? Regardless of which is true, Chicago Cubs fans continue to say every spring training, this is the year. And I believe that someday we're going to see the end of heartbreak and loss, and finally have a World Series victory, and the curse of the billy goat will be gone forever. This is the year. Let's go Cubs.